Flight attendant Carmen Rodriguez accidentally spilled scalding coffee on a quiet passenger in first class. What she didn't know was that this man was about to sign an $8 billion deal to purchase the entire airline she worked for, and in 72 hours, her mistake would cost every crew member their job. Have you ever witnessed someone's assumptions destroy not just their own career, but an entire team's future? Tuesday, 6:47 a.m., flight AC 2891, Dallas to New York. The morning light filtered through the cabin windows of Atlantic Airways flight AC 2891 as passengers settled in for the 3-hour journey to JFK. In seat 2F sat Marcus Williams, a man in his early 40s wearing a simple navy sweater and jeans. No designer logos, no flashy jewelry, just a well-worn leather messenger bag and a book about sustainable aviation technology. To flight attendant Carmen Rodriguez, he looked exactly like what she expected. Another diversity hire executive trying to play in first class with his company's money. "Coffee, sir?" Carmen asked with practiced professionalism, though her tone carried a subtle edge that regular first-class passengers would never receive. "Yes, thank you. Black coffee would be perfect," Marcus replied, without looking up from his book, his voice calm and measured. Carmen returned with the coffee service, but as she leaned over to place the cup on Marcus's tray table, her hand slipped. The scalding liquid splashed across his sweater, his book, and his laptop bag. "Oh my goodness!" Carmen exclaimed with theatrical concern, loud enough for the entire first-class cabin to hear. "I'm so sorry. These things happen when people don't keep their belongings properly stowed." The first response. Marcus looked down at his coffee-soaked sweater, then up at Carmen with those same calm, dark eyes that would soon become legendary in aviation industry circles. He didn't shout, he didn't demand to speak to a manager, he simply reached for the napkins she offered. "Accidents happen," he said quietly, dabbing at the coffee stain. But Carmen wasn't finished. She had done this before to passengers who didn't belong in first class, and it usually worked perfectly. A little humiliation, a little discomfort, and they'd complain to friends instead of making waves with the airline. "Sir, I think you might be more comfortable in economy where there's more room to spread out your things," Carmen suggested, gesturing at his now soaked belongings. "I can have someone escort you to a more appropriate seat." The businessman in 1A pulled out his phone, sensing drama. A young woman in 3C looked uncomfortable but said nothing. The elderly couple in 2A whispered to each other about people who don't know how to behave in first class. 6:52 a.m. The documentation begins. Marcus reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a small towel, the kind frequent travelers carry. As he dried his laptop, a flash of something caught the light. The businessman in 1A zoomed in with his camera phone, a platinum American Express Centurion card, followed by what looked like a black diplomatic passport. "Probably fake," the businessman muttered, but he kept recording. Carmen noticed the cards too and felt a flicker of uncertainty. But she'd committed to her performance now, and backing down would look weak in front of the other passengers. "Sir, I think you'd be more comfortable in your assigned seat. First-class service can be overwhelming for some passengers." That's when Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, Roberts and Associates, legal, urgent. He declined the call and looked up at Carmen with the same composed expression he'd maintained since boarding. "Miss Rodriguez, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I have a valid first-class ticket, and I would prefer to remain in my assigned seat." 6:54 a.m. Authority escalation. Carmen felt her authority being challenged in front of a cabin full of witnesses. She pressed the call button for the senior flight attendant. "Maria, could you come to first class, please? We have a passenger situation." Senior flight attendant Maria Santos approached, her 20 years of experience immediately assessing the tension in the cabin. She saw the coffee stains, Carmen's flustered expression, and Marcus's unnaturally calm demeanor. "What seems to be the problem?" Maria asked professionally. "This passenger spilled coffee on himself and is becoming disruptive," Carmen lied smoothly. "I offered to relocate him to a more comfortable seat, but he's refusing to cooperate." Marcus remained silent, continuing to clean his belongings. His book, The Future of Sustainable Aviation, a Technical Analysis, was now coffee-stained, but still readable. Maria noticed the book title and felt her first flutter of doubt. Random passengers didn't typically read dense technical aviation literature. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass and identification?" Marcus handed over both documents without hesitation. Maria examined them carefully. Seat 2F, first class, purchased 6 days ago for $4,247. The ID read Marcus Williams, with an address in Beverly Hills. But Maria had seen sophisticated scams before. Rich people usually traveled with obvious entourages or designer everything. This man's understated appearance seemed calculated to her.
6:57 a.m. The social media explosion. The businessman's video had already been posted to LinkedIn with the caption, entitled "Passenger Causing Drama in First Class, This is Why I Fly Private." His network of fellow executives began sharing immediately. Comments poured in, "This is exactly why airlines need better screening. Some people have no class. Why is this taking so long? Just remove him." Carmen felt vindicated seeing the social media support. She pulled out her own phone and started a subtle live stream to her Instagram followers. "Hey everyone, dealing with some first-class drama this morning. Some people really don't understand appropriate behavior," she whispered to her phone. Her viewer count climbed, 34, 67, 94 people watching in real time. 6:59 a.m. The call to the cockpit. Maria made her decision. "Sir, I'm going to need you to gather your belongings and move to an economy seat. We can sort this out after landing." Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID read, "Atlantic Airways board chair, personal." He answered immediately. "Marcus Williams speaking?" "Yes, I'm aware of the situation." "No, I'm still in first class. The crew seems to have some concerns about my ticket validity." Maria's blood ran cold. Board chair's personal line? That wasn't something random passengers had access to. The voice on the other end was loud enough for Maria to hear. "Marcus, are you telling me our crew is harassing you right now, on the day of the signing?" Marcus looked directly at Maria with those calm, unblinking eyes. "Maria, before this goes any further, I think you should know that I'm supposed to be in a very important meeting when we land, a meeting that will determine the future of Atlantic Airways." 7:02 a.m. The first crack. Maria felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. The board chair's personal line, the important meeting, the technical aviation book, pieces were starting to form a picture she didn't like. "Sir, what kind of meeting?" she asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know the answer. Marcus reached into his messenger bag with deliberate precision. What he pulled out would change everything, not just for Carmen and Maria, but for every single employee of Atlantic Airways. "The kind of meeting," Marcus said quietly, "where someone signs an $8 billion acquisition agreement." The cabin fell completely silent, except for the hum of the aircraft engines and the soft electronic beeping of multiple phones recording what was about to become the most expensive coffee spill in aviation history. Tuesday, 7:52 a.m., 30,000 feet above Kansas. The transformation of Flight PSX 2891 from a routine business trip to a corporate crisis happened faster than anyone could have imagined. In the span of 5 minutes, Dr. Amara Okofor had gone from being treated as an unwelcome passenger to being recognized as the woman about to purchase the entire airline for $8.2 billion. But recognition was only the beginning. What happened next would determine not just the fate of the crew members who had discriminated against her, but the future of Phoenix Sky Airlines itself. The emergency call chain. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood in the first-class galley with her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in hushed but urgent tones to Phoenix Sky Airlines CEO Marcus Thompson. The color had drained from her face as she explained the situation. "Marcus, I need you to understand the gravity of this. Our crew spilled coffee on Dr. Okofor and then told her she should move to economy because she seemed overwhelmed by first-class service. Yes, that Dr. Okofor. No, I'm not joking. She's sitting 20 feet away from me right now." Meanwhile, Dr. Okofer was fielding her own series of calls. Her phone had become a command center with legal advisors, financial teams, and public relations specialists all weighing in on how this incident might affect the acquisition. Jennifer put the entire PR team on standby. This is going viral faster than we anticipated, and we need to control the narrative. No, we're not canceling the acquisition, but we may need to restructure the terms. Senior flight attendant Patricia Williams watched this coordination with growing dread. Both women were managing crisis responses in real time, but only one of them held the power to determine Phoenix Sky's future. 7:55 a.m., the social media explosion. What had started as Mr. Richardson's simple LinkedIn post had exploded across every major social media platform. His live stream of the confrontation now had over 1,200 viewers, including some of the most influential names in American business. The comment section had become a real-time discussion of corporate culture, discrimination, and power dynamics. At Sarah Chen, ESQ, civil rights attorney, "This is textbook discrimination. The power dynamic here is staggering. They're discriminating against their own future owner." At Michael Rodriguez, CEO, Fortune 500 executive, "I've flown with Phoenix Sky for years. If this is how they treat customers, I'm switching airlines." At Professor Smith, HBS, Harvard Business School, "Students, pay attention. This is how not to handle customer service. This will be a case study for decades." David Park's Instagram story had been screenshotted and shared to Twitter, where hashtag Phoenix Sky Scandal was now trending nationally. The aviation industry was taking notice. At Aviation Weekly, breaking, reports of discrimination incident involving Phoenix Sky Airlines and potential major investor, story developing. At Flight Attendant Union, "We do not condone discriminatory behavior by any airline personnel. All crew members must treat passengers with equal respect, regardless of appearance or assumptions."
At Travel Rights, "This is exactly why we need stronger passenger protection laws. No one should face this treatment regardless of their wealth or status." But the most damaging post came from an unexpected source: Mrs. Goldstein's daughter, Rebecca Chen, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist for the Los Angeles Times. At Rebecca Chen LA, "My mother is witnessing what appears to be systematic discrimination at Phoenix Sky Air. As a journalist, I'm horrified. As a daughter, I'm proud she's documenting everything. Thread incoming 1/47. The thread that followed included photos, videos, and a detailed timeline of events. Within an hour, it had been retweeted 15,000 times and quoted by major news outlets across the country. 8 a.m., the corporate emergency response. In Phoenix Sky Airlines headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona, emergency meetings were being called at every level of the organization. CEO Marcus Thompson had immediately convened the crisis management team, but they were dealing with a situation unlike anything in their corporate playbook. "How did we not know she was on one of our flights?" demanded Chief Operating Officer Linda Santos. "We're about to sell her the entire company, and our crew is treating her like a fraud." Marketing Director James Wu was monitoring social media in real time. "The story is spreading exponentially. We've got mentions on CNN, MSNBC, Fox Business, and Bloomberg. The aviation industry publications are all picking it up. This is going to be front-page news by tomorrow." Legal counsel Maria Rodriguez was perhaps the most concerned. "The discrimination angle is bad enough, but the timing makes it catastrophic. If Okaro Industries decides to withdraw from the acquisition because of cultural concerns, we could face bankruptcy within 6 months." CEO Thompson made the decision that would define his leadership. "I'm flying to Chicago immediately. We'll handle this face-to-face." 8:03 a.m., the crew realization. Back on the aircraft, Isabella Chen was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of her mistake. She sat in the galley area, scrolling through the social media posts that were multiplying by the minute. Her own Instagram live stream, which had seemed like harmless workplace drama just an hour ago, was now being shared as evidence of systemic discrimination. The comments on her posts had shifted from supportive to horrified. At former Phoenix Sky employee. Isabella, you just ended your career and possibly took down the whole airline with you. At aviation lawyer. This video will be Exhibit A in the discrimination lawsuit. Document everything. At flight attendant mentor. 25 years in this industry and I've never seen anything this bad. This is not who we are. Patricia Williams approached Isabella with a mixture of sympathy and professional duty. Isabella, you need to stop posting on social media immediately. Everything you say now is going to be scrutinized by lawyers. I don't understand how this happened, Isabella said, tears streaming down her face. I was just doing my job. She didn't look like she belonged in first class. That's exactly the problem, Patricia replied quietly. What does belonging in first class look like to you? 8:06 a.m. The passenger perspective. The other first-class passengers had become unwilling participants in a drama that was reshaping their understanding of discrimination and power. Each was processing the events differently. Mr. Richardson, the venture capitalist, had stopped his live stream but continued documenting everything. As someone who had spent his career evaluating businesses and their cultures, he was seeing Phoenix Sky Airlines through new eyes. I've flown first class hundreds of times. I've never seen crew members question a passenger's right to be there unless they were causing actual problems. This was different. Mrs. Goldstein, whose family had faced discrimination for generations, recognized the patterns immediately. My dear, this is what systemic bias looks like. It's not always intentional, but the impact is the same. David Park, the tech entrepreneur, was documenting everything for different reasons. As a startup founder who had faced his own assumptions about young Asian men in business, he understood the power dynamics at play. The crazy thing is, he said to his camera, she handled it with more grace than most CEOs I know would. If someone treated me like that before I was about to give them $8 billion, I'd walk away. 8:10 a.m. The financial markets react. News of the incident had reached the financial markets, and Phoenix Sky Airlines stock price was beginning to fluctuate. The company's shares, which had been trading steadily in anticipation of the Okaro Industries acquisition announcement, started showing volatility as traders tried to assess the impact. Financial news networks were beginning to pick up the story. CNBC breaking news. Phoenix Sky Airlines stock down 3% on reports of discrimination incident involving major investor. Bloomberg terminal alert. Okara Industries Phoenix Sky $8.2 billion deal potentially in jeopardy following passenger incident. Reuters Financial. Aviation sector watching Phoenix Sky situation amid social media discrimination reports. Dr. Okara was monitoring these developments on her phone while maintaining her composed exterior. Her financial advisor called with updates.
Amara, the market is responding to the social media coverage. Phoenix Sky is down 4% and falling. Your other transportation holdings are up 2% as investors speculate you might redirect the investment. What's your recommendation? She asked. From a purely financial perspective, this gives you enormous leverage to renegotiate terms. But from a reputational standpoint, how you handle this will define Okafor Industries' brand for years. 8:15 a.m. The legal implications deepen. Dr. Okafor's legal team had been analyzing the incident from multiple angles. The conference call included some of the most prominent civil rights and corporate attorneys in the country. Amara, we need to discuss the legal landscape, said lead counsel Jennifer Walsh from Skadden Arps. This incident provides grounds for several different legal actions. First, there's a clear civil rights violation under federal anti-discrimination laws. The documentation is extensive, multiple witnesses, video evidence, and social media posts from the crew members themselves. Second, if you proceed with the acquisition, this incident gives you grounds to demand immediate changes to corporate leadership and culture as a condition of closing. Third, and most importantly for the broader impact, this creates an opportunity to establish new industry standards for passenger treatment. Corporate law specialist David Chen added his perspective. The timing is unprecedented. We've never seen a discrimination case where the victim holds this level of economic power over the perpetrating organization. It fundamentally changes the dynamics. Dr. Okafor listened carefully to each perspective. What I'm hearing is that we have an opportunity to create lasting change, not just seek compensation for a personal slight. Exactly, Walsh replied. This could become a landmark case in corporate accountability and workplace culture transformation. The aviation industry was watching the Phoenix Sky situation with intense interest. Other airlines were already conducting emergency reviews of their own customer service protocols. American Airlines issued a statement. American Airlines is committed to treating all passengers with dignity and respect, regardless of background or appearance. We are reviewing this incident with concern. Delta Airlines CEO posted on LinkedIn. The customer service shown in today's viral incident does not represent the values of professional aviation. All travelers deserve respect. United Airlines quietly began emergency bias training sessions for crew members scheduled to work that day. The Association of Flight Attendants released a statement. While we support our members' professionalism, discriminatory behavior has no place in aviation. This incident highlights the need for enhanced cultural competency training across the industry. Major news outlets were now assigning reporters to cover the story. The combination of discrimination, corporate power, and social media virality had created a perfect storm of public interest. CNN had dispatched the team to Chicago O'Hare to intercept Dr. Okafor upon landing. MSNBC was preparing a segment on discrimination in travel. Fox Business was focusing on the financial implications of the acquisition. Rebecca Chen, the LA Times journalist whose mother was witnessing the events firsthand, was writing what would become the definitive account of the incident. Her editors had cleared the front page for her story. "Mom, I need you to keep documenting everything. This is going to be one of the biggest corporate accountability stories of the year." Mrs. Goldstein replied, "Sweetheart, I've been watching this woman handle this situation with more grace than I've ever seen. She's not angry, she's strategic. That's what makes this so powerful." 8:25 a.m. The crew's desperation. Isabella Chen was now fully grasping the consequences of her actions. She approached Dr. Okafor's seat with tears in her eyes. "Dr. Okafor, I need to apologize. I made a terrible mistake. I let my assumptions guide my behavior, and I'm so sorry." Dr. Okafor looked up from her phone where she had been coordinating with her team. Her expression was calm but serious. "Isabella, I appreciate your apology, but I want you to understand that this isn't just about me. How many other passengers have you treated this way? How many other people have been made to feel unwelcome on Phoenix Sky flights because they didn't fit your expectations?" Isabella struggled to answer. I don't know. I thought I was just maintaining standards." Whose standards? And who decided that someone's appearance determines their right to respectful service? Patricia Williams joined the conversation. "Dr. Okafor, is there anything we can do to make this right?" "Patricia, making this right isn't about my experience today. It's about ensuring this never happens to anyone else. That requires systematic change, not individual apologies." 8:28 a.m. The CEO's flight. Phoenix Sky Airlines CEO Marcus Thompson was racing through Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport to catch the next flight to Chicago. His phone hadn't stopped ringing since Captain Mitchell's call. "Marcus, this is a corporate nightmare," his chief of staff told him as they rushed to the gate. "Social media is calling for boycotts. Our biggest corporate clients are questioning their contracts. The board is in emergency session." "What's our stock price?" "Down 7% and falling. Trading volume is through the roof." Thompson made a decision that would be studied in business schools for years. "Cancel all my meetings for the rest of the week. We're going to fix this properly, whatever it takes." As he boarded his flight to Chicago, Thompson received a text from the Phoenix Sky board chairman. "Fix this, or we'll find someone who can."
8:32 a.m. The viral tipping point.
The story had reached the viral tipping point where it begins to take on a life of its own. Hashtag Phoenix Sky Scandal was now trending in the top 5 nationally, with thousands of people sharing their own experiences of discrimination while traveling. At Traveling While Black. This thread is for everyone who's been questioned, moved, or mistreated while traveling. Share your stories. Hashtag Phoenix Sky Scandal. The responses were overwhelming. At Dr. Maria Lopez, flight attendant asked if I was in the right seat 3 times. I'm a neurosurgeon. At Engineer Dave, asked to show my boarding pass 4 times while white passengers walked past unchecked. At Professor Jones, told I looked suspicious reading academic papers in first class. The stories revealed a pattern of discrimination that went far beyond Phoenix Sky Airlines. But this incident had provided a focal point for broader conversations about bias in customer service. 8:35 a.m. The power shift. Dr. Okofer's phone rang with a call that would change everything. The caller ID showed Phoenix Sky Board Chairman Robert Sterling. She answered on speaker so Captain Mitchell could hear. Dr. Okofer, this is Robert Sterling. I'm calling personally to express the board's profound apologies for this incident. Mr. Sterling, I appreciate your call. How can Phoenix Sky demonstrate that this was an aberration rather than a reflection of your corporate culture? We're prepared to implement any changes you deem necessary as part of the acquisition agreement. We want to ensure this never happens again. Dr. Okofer paused thoughtfully. Mr. Sterling, I'm not interested in punitive measures. I'm interested in transformative change. Are you prepared to make Phoenix Sky a model for inclusive customer service across the entire aviation industry? Whatever it takes, Dr. Okofer, the board stands behind any reforms you propose. Then let's schedule an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. I want to discuss not just the acquisition, but a comprehensive cultural transformation plan. 8:38 a.m. The crew's reckoning. Patricia Williams gathered the flight crew in the galley for an unprecedented mid-flight meeting. The gravity of the situation had finally sunk in for everyone. I need everyone to understand what just happened, she said quietly. We discriminated against a passenger based on our assumptions about her appearance and economic status. That passenger is about to become our owner. Flight attendant Carlos Mendez, who had been working in the coach cabin, spoke up. Patricia, I've seen Isabella do this before. She has patterns in how she treats certain passengers. What do you mean? Patricia asked. She always finds reasons to question passengers who don't look like her idea of first-class travelers. Last month, she made a young Hispanic businessman show his boarding pass 3 times. Isabella looked shocked. I was just being thorough. No, Carlos replied firmly, you were profiling, and now it's caught up with all of us. The realization that this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a pattern, made the situation even more serious. 8:42 a.m. The strategic response. Dr. Okofer was now fully engaged in crisis management mode, but not the kind anyone expected. Instead of seeking revenge or compensation, she was orchestrating a comprehensive response that would transform the entire situation into a teaching moment. Jennifer, she said to her legal counsel, I want you to draft a framework for industry-wide anti-discrimination standards. Make it comprehensive, but implementable. Sarah, she addressed her PR director, coordinate with major civil rights organizations. I want this to become a collaborative effort, not a punitive one. David, she told her financial advisor, restructure the acquisition terms to include binding commitments to diversity and inclusion metrics. Make corporate culture a measurable part of our investment thesis. Captain Mitchell watched this coordination with amazement. She had expected anger, demands for firings, or threats to cancel the acquisition. Instead, she was witnessing the systematic planning of institutional change. 8:45 a.m. The media strategy. Dr. Okofer's communications team had developed a media strategy that would control the narrative while advancing their broader goals. Instead of being defensive or reactive, they were going to be proactive and educational.
"We're going to give one exclusive interview," her PR director explained over the phone. "CNN at 2 p.m., right after the board meeting. The message will be about transformation, not punishment." "What about the social media response?" asked her digital strategist. "We let the documentation speak for itself. We don't add fuel to the fire, but we also don't hide from what happened. Transparency and accountability." Mrs. Goldstein, who had been listening to parts of these conversations, approached Dr. Okofer. "My dear, I've been in advocacy work for 40 years. I've never seen anyone handle a crisis with this level of strategic thinking." "Mrs. Goldstein, crisis creates opportunity. The question is whether we use that opportunity for personal satisfaction or systemic improvement." 8:48 a.m. The financial recalculation. The financial implications of the incident were becoming clearer by the hour. Phoenix Sky stock price continued to fall as investors worried about the acquisition's future. But Dr. Okofer's other holdings were rising as market analysts speculated about her potential redirect of the $8.2 billion investment. Her financial team was running multiple scenarios. Scenario 1. We proceed with the acquisition as planned, but at a reduced price to reflect reputational damage.
Scenario 2. We restructure the deal to include performance metrics tied to diversity and inclusion improvements. Scenario 3. We create a new industry standard and license it to other airlines, turning this incident into a revenue-generating transformation platform. Dr. Okofer considered each option. "I like Scenario 3. Let's build something that outlasts this single transaction." 8:52 a.m. The crew's future. Isabella Chen was facing the reality that her career in aviation was likely over. The videos of her discriminatory behavior were being shared by thousands of people, and her name was becoming synonymous with workplace bias. But Patricia Williams was thinking bigger. "Isabella, you made a terrible mistake, but you have a choice about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "You can disappear and let this define you, or you can become part of the solution. Dr. Okofer is planning systematic changes. Maybe you can help train other crew members about the impact of unconscious bias." Isabella looked skeptical. "She'd never want me involved after what I did." "Ask her," Patricia suggested. "The worst she can say is no." 8:55 a.m. The approach to Chicago. As flight PSX 2891 began its initial descent into Chicago O'Hare, the dynamic in the first-class cabin had completely transformed. What had begun as a discrimination incident had evolved into a collaborative planning session for industry-wide reform. Dr. Okofer was coordinating with legal teams, PR specialists, civil rights organizations, and financial advisors. Captain Mitchell was documenting everything for the comprehensive report that would reshape Phoenix Sky training programs. The passengers were sharing contact information and discussing how they could support the transformation efforts. Even Isabella Chen had stopped crying and started taking notes as Dr. Okofer outlined her vision for cultural change in the aviation industry. "This incident doesn't end when we land," Dr. Okofer announced to the cabin. "This is where the real work begins." 8:58 a.m. The landing strategy. As the aircraft descended through 10,000 feet, Dr. Okofer's phone rang with final coordination calls. The CEO was already in Chicago. The media was waiting at the gate. The board meeting was confirmed for 2 p.m. But most importantly, civil rights organizations across the country were rallying to support her vision of transforming this moment of discrimination into lasting institutional change. "Dr. Okofer," Captain Mitchell said as she prepared to return to the cockpit for landing, "I want you to know that today changed how I see my responsibility as a leader. Thank you for showing us what accountability looks like." Captain Mitchell, "Leadership is measured not by how we handle success, but how we transform failure into progress." As the wheels touched down at Chicago O'Hare, everyone on flight PSX 2891 knew that they had been part of something that would be remembered and studied for decades to come. The discrimination incident was ending, but the transformation was just beginning. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner touched down at Chicago O'Hare with the gentlest of landings, but the impact of what had transpired during the flight would reverberate through the aviation industry for years to come. As the aircraft taxied to gate B-12, Dr. Amara Okafor gathered her coffee-stained blazer and messenger bag, completely unaware that a crowd of reporters, Phoenix Sky Airlines executives, and curious onlookers had assembled at the arrival gate. The viral social media coverage had transformed a simple business flight into a national news event. Hashtag Phoenix Sky Scandal was trending at number 2 nationally, just behind breaking political news. The story had been picked up by CNN, MSNBC, Fox Business, Bloomberg, and every major aviation publication in the country. The arrival. As passengers began deplaning, Dr. Okafor noticed the unusual commotion beyond the jet bridge. Camera crews, reporters with microphones, and a small crowd of Phoenix Sky Airlines executives in dark suits waited anxiously near the gate. Captain Sarah Mitchell accompanied Dr. Okafor off the aircraft. "Dr. Okafor, I want to personally escort you through this. What happened on my flight was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility for my crew's actions." Isabella Chen, the flight attendant who had started the incident, walked several steps behind them. Her face was red with tears and shame, but she had made a decision during the final minutes of the flight. She was going to face the consequences of her actions directly. As they emerged from the jet bridge, the crowd erupted. Camera flashes illuminated the corridor, and reporters began shouting questions. "Dr. Okafor, are you still planning to purchase Phoenix Sky? Are you still planning to purchase Phoenix Sky? How do you feel about the discrimination you experienced? Will there be legal action against the crew?" Dr. Okafor raised her hand for silence, and remarkably, the crowd quieted. Her presence commanded attention in a way that surprised even the veteran reporters. "I'll be making a statement after my meeting with Phoenix Sky's board of directors this afternoon. What I will say now is that today's incident represents an opportunity for transformative change in how the aviation industry treats all passengers." Scenario 2. We restructure the deal to include performance metrics tied to diversity and inclusion improvements. Scenario 3. We create a new industry standard and license it to other airlines, turning this incident into a revenue-generating transformation platform. Dr. Okafor considered each option. "I like Scenario 3. Let's build something that outlasts this single transaction." 8:52 a.m. The crew's future. Isabella Chen was facing the reality that her career in aviation was likely over. The videos of her discriminatory behavior were being shared by thousands of people, and her name was becoming synonymous with workplace bias. But Patricia Williams was thinking bigger. "Isabella, you made a terrible mistake, but you have a choice about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "You can disappear and let this define you, or you can become part of the solution. Dr. Okafor is planning systematic changes. Maybe you can help train other crew members about the impact of unconscious bias." Isabella looked skeptical. "She'd never want me involved after what I did." "Ask her," Patricia suggested. "The worst she can say is no." 8:55 a.m. The approach to Chicago. As flight PSX 2891 began its initial descent into Chicago O'Hare, the dynamic in the first-class cabin had completely transformed. What had begun as a discrimination incident had evolved into a collaborative planning session for industry-wide reform. Dr. Okafor was coordinating with legal teams, PR specialists, civil rights organizations, and financial advisors. Captain Mitchell was documenting everything for the comprehensive report that would reshape Phoenix Sky training programs. The passengers were sharing contact information and discussing how they could support the transformation efforts. Even Isabella Chen had stopped crying and started taking notes as Dr. Okafor outlined her vision for cultural change in the aviation industry. "This incident doesn't end when we land," Dr. Okafor announced to the cabin. "This is where the real work begins." 8:58 a.m. The landing strategy. As the aircraft descended through 10,000 feet, Dr. Okafor's phone rang with final coordination calls. The CEO was already in Chicago. The media was waiting at the gate. The board meeting was confirmed for 2 p.m. But most importantly, civil rights organizations across the country were rallying to support her vision of transforming this moment of discrimination into lasting institutional change. Dr. Okafor, Captain Mitchell said as she prepared to return to the cockpit for landing, "I want you to know that today changed how I see my responsibility as a leader. Thank you for showing us what accountability looks like." Captain Mitchell, leadership is measured not by how we handle success, but how we transform failure into progress. As the wheels touched down at Chicago O'Hare, everyone on flight PSX 2891 knew that they had been part of something that would be remembered and studied for decades to come. The discrimination incident was ending, but the transformation was just beginning. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner touched down at Chicago O'Hare with the gentlest of landings, but the impact of what had transpired during the flight would reverberate through the aviation industry for years to come. As the aircraft taxied to gate B-12, Dr. Amara Okafor gathered her coffee-stained blazer and messenger bag, completely unaware that a crowd of reporters, Phoenix Sky Airlines executives, and curious onlookers had assembled at the arrival gate. The viral social media coverage had transformed a simple business flight into a national news event. Hashtag Phoenix Sky Scandal was trending at number 2 nationally, just behind breaking political news. The story had been picked up by CNN, MSNBC, Fox Business, Bloomberg, and every major aviation publication in the country. The arrival. As passengers began deplaning, Dr. Okafor noticed the unusual commotion beyond the jet bridge. Camera crews, reporters with microphones, and a small crowd of Phoenix Sky Airlines executives in dark suits waited anxiously near the gate. Captain Sarah Mitchell accompanied Dr. Okafor off the aircraft. "Dr. Okafor, I want to personally escort you through this. What happened on my flight was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility for my crew's actions." Isabella Chen, the flight attendant who had started the incident, walked several steps behind them. Her face was red with tears and shame, but she had made a decision during the final minutes of the flight. She was going to face the consequences of her actions directly. As they emerged from the jet bridge, the crowd erupted. Camera flashes illuminated the corridor, and reporters began shouting questions. "Dr. Okafor, are you still planning to purchase Phoenix Sky? Are you still planning to purchase Phoenix Sky? How do you feel about the discrimination you experienced? Will there be legal action against the crew?" Dr. Okafor raised her hand for silence, and remarkably, the crowd quieted. Her presence commanded attention in a way that surprised even the veteran reporters. "I'll be making a statement after my meeting with Phoenix Sky's board of directors this afternoon. What I will say now is that today's incident represents an opportunity for transformative change in how the aviation industry treats all passengers."
She paused, gathering courage for what came next. "But I also want you to know that this wasn't an isolated incident. I've made similar assumptions about other passengers, and I know other crew members have done the same. This is a cultural problem, not just an individual mistake." The honesty was stunning. Instead of minimizing her actions or making excuses, Isabella was exposing the systematic nature of the problem. Captain Mitchell added her perspective. "Dr. Okafor's response to this incident has shown me what true leadership looks like. She could have destroyed our careers, but instead she's choosing to transform our industry. That's a level of grace and strategic thinking that should guide how we treat every passenger." The public response. The 2 p.m. CNN interview was broadcast live across the country. Dr. Okafor's composed, thoughtful responses resonated with viewers who had been following the story on social media. "I want to be clear," she told CNN's Rebecca Martinez, "this isn't about revenge or punishment. This is about creating systematic change that ensures no passenger faces discrimination based on appearance, race, or assumptions about their economic status." The interview clips went viral immediately. Her calm demeanor, strategic thinking, and focus on transformation rather than retaliation earned respect across the political spectrum.
Social media responses were overwhelmingly positive. At Civil Rights Lawyer, this is how you turn discrimination into transformation. Dr. Okafor is writing the playbook for corporate accountability. At Aviation Expert, 40 years in this industry, and I've never seen leadership like this. She's changing aviation forever. At Business Professor, students study this case. This is how you leverage power for systematic change rather than personal satisfaction. The industry transformation. By 5 p.m., other major airlines were announcing their own bias training initiatives. Dr. Okafor's response had created a competitive dynamic where airlines were trying to outdo each other in demonstrating their commitment to inclusive customer service. American Airlines announced a $50 million investment in diversity training. Delta pledged to create a passenger advocacy position reporting directly to the CEO. United launched a comprehensive review of their customer service protocols. The entire aviation industry was transforming in real time, triggered by one woman's strategic response to discrimination. 6 months later, the transformation at Phoenix Sky Airlines was measurable and profound. Passenger discrimination complaints dropped by 89% across their entire network. The new advocacy system had processed over 3,000 cases, with 96% of them resolved within 24 hours. Most importantly, Phoenix Sky's customer satisfaction scores reached industry-leading levels. Treating all passengers with dignity, it turned out, was not just morally right, it was profitable. Isabella Chen had become an unlikely advocate for change. After completing intensive bias training, she now leads Phoenix Sky's new crew education program, sharing her story as a cautionary tale and teaching others to recognize their own unconscious assumptions. Captain Mitchell was promoted to head of Phoenix Sky's new Culture Transformation Division, implementing the protocols that Dr. Okafor had outlined in that historic board meeting. Dr. Okafor's acquisition of Phoenix Sky Airlines was completed as scheduled, with all diversity and inclusion metrics exceeded in the first year. The $500 million in escrow was released, but she donated it to civil rights organizations anyway, saying, "Real change is its own reward." The legacy. The incident on Flight PSX 2891 became a landmark case study in business schools across the country. Dr. Okafor's response demonstrated how individual dignity, strategic thinking, and systematic change could transform entire industries. The Okafor Protocol, her framework for addressing discrimination incidents, was adopted by companies across multiple industries. What began as a coffee spill on a Tuesday morning flight became a blueprint for corporate accountability in America. But perhaps the most profound change was cultural. The incident sparked nationwide conversations about unconscious bias, the power dynamics of customer service, and the responsibility of individuals with power to create systematic change rather than seek personal revenge. Dr. Okafor established the Dignity in Travel Foundation, providing legal aid and advocacy for travelers facing discrimination. The foundation has handled over 2,400 cases with a 94% success rate in achieving policy changes or appropriate compensation. The final message. 3 years later, Dr. Okafor was invited to speak at the International Aviation Leadership Conference. Her keynote address was titled "From Coffee Spills to Cultural Change: How One Incident Transformed an Industry." She told the audience of airline executives and government officials, "The question isn't whether discrimination will occur. The question is, how will you respond when it does? You can choose revenge, which satisfies the ego but changes nothing. You can choose compensation, which addresses the symptoms but not the cause. Or you can choose transformation, which requires courage, commitment, and the understanding that real power is measured by the positive change you create rather than seek personal revenge." The speech received a standing ovation and became required viewing at aviation leadership programs worldwide. Isabella Chen was in the audience that day. After the speech, she approached Dr. Okafor. "Dr. Okafor,
I wanted to thank you again for choosing transformation over destruction. You saved not just my career, but helped me become a better person.
Dr. Okafor smiled. Isabella, you chose to learn and grow from your mistake. That took courage. You become one of our most effective advocates for change. The conversation was a perfect example of the principles Dr. Okafor had demonstrated from the beginning: dignity in response to wrongdoing, strategic thinking over emotional reaction, and the understanding that real leadership transforms problems into opportunities for positive change. The story of Flight PSX 2891 continues to inspire leaders across industries to choose transformation over retaliation, systematic change over individual satisfaction, and the long-term betterment of society over short-term personal gain. Because sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't raising your voice, it's raising the standard for how everyone should be treated.